On this episode of The View from Jamestown, it's our first episode of 2024. We recap the first few days of the year, talk about the optimism that seems to be out in the industry for the first quarter. We also talk a lot about the ocean freight issues these days, a lot of issues coming from all over the world trying to get material in and out of the U.S. All that and more on The View from Jamestown. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the View from Jamestown podcast edition. This is episode 102. This is our January 2024 edition, and we got the full team this morning. Going from my left to right, we have TCC President Robb Roach, Inside Sales Manager Nicole Greenberg, VP of Sales and Marketing AJ Petrarca, and Latin American Operations Manager Javier Fernandez.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, fellas and ladies.
How's it going, Benny?
How y'all doing?
Starting the year strong.
Yeah?
I think so.
I think so.
One of us is.
He's jumping right into it. Who's this guy?
I think so.
I'm recharged after my vacation.
Yeah?
I was 2 weeks down south. I'm ready for the cold weather and start selling.
The new year, new me has hit Javi.
Yeah, kind of.
So it was warm in Peru.
It was very warm in Peru, like 88, 90.
Wow.
And in Colombia, it was like in the 80s as well.
Summer in Peru, so obviously
summer. So it was humid. So I don't do very well there.
Yeah,
but it's okay. Glad to be back.
Come back to a snowstorm.
Of course.
Back to your no jackets.
Yes.
Just for the record, for everyone that can see Javi right now, this is what he wears inside, outside. It could be 20 degrees outside. This is the look.
Yeah, this is what you're gonna get.
and we're in New England, so outside's 30 degrees today, 35 at least, something like that.
Yesterday was hot. Yesterday was like 50.
Yeah, it was. Oh, we had a rainstorm. Yeah, that's a south wind.
Hot.
Yeah, it was warm.
That's a good point. It was like tropical yesterday.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yep.
All the snow melted. Very nice.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. So things are busy to start the year. Javi, tell us more. Tell us more.
I think so. Like the last week was kind of dead, but this week people are back to the jobs and they're ready placing orders and being actively quoting, doing some. People are the new thing is I think reshoring. They don't want it as far as they wanted before, so they want to shorter lead times, and sometimes they're willing to pay a little bit premium for that. Yep. So that's how I see things this week. Very, very busy this week. I'm staying late, more than 3 o'clock. Wow. Which is yesterday I closed the office.
Javi closed the office yesterday.
Wow. Yeah, I
know.
forgot the code.
There should be a tracker, like an economic, like how late Javi stays at the office.
Correlates the POs.
Yeah, it was busy. Yesterday was busy.
You were typing away over there, crossing things off your list.
Yes.
It was incredible. I'm like,
it was
who
good.
is that?
Yesterday was a good day. Yesterday was a good day for me. Overall. What's happening?
Yeah, it seems like a busy start to the year. I think the reshoring is a big thing. People like their words like reshoring. We hear a lot of restocking. People are selling, but people are having to buy raw materials to produce those goods that they're then selling. They're not just working off old inventories. So we're seeing a lot of that.
Yes.
What are you writing?
No. I'm just checking what are my to-do list for today.
Can we get a third camera angle on Javi's to-do list as in live time as we're recording?
Confidential information.
That's trade secrets right there.
Yeah, it seems like a busy start to the year. AJ was already. I think AJ set the record to get out and travel. Just traveling a little bit this week, right?
I did. Is that the record? I was the first one to do it. In
first of us.
Joe D beat him. Well, first of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd be surprised if I was the first one, but
You went
traveling this week.
You went to warmer climates just like Javi.
Beautiful Chicago in the snow. Yep, I left snow to get more snow, but yeah, I guess a lot of people's travel were messed up this week. There's weather everywhere, from southeast up to the northeast and Midwest. Everyone's getting weather this week, it seems. So
You didn't get messed up?
I got delayed by 15 minutes yesterday on the way back, and that's it.
Bad.
Luckily,
Not
but
bad.
everybody else was not so lucky.
And how was that? Good to get out and see people. What's the mood from folks out there in Chicagoland?
Oh, it's good to get out and see people always. The mood, a lot of people were expecting January to start a lot stronger than it has, but it's the sentiment is that business is okay. It's not bad. It's just not as strong as they were kind of forecasting. But yeah, that's we'll see what happens. But I think Javi's right. This week is definitely busier than last week. Like last week, I think a lot of people still were on vacay or extended holiday. So it's
it was a soft opening.
Soft opening.
Soft opening.
Soft opening.
First week of January.
I like that.
I like that.
That's a very good way of putting it.
Customer reminds me, last week was a soft opening. I was like, I'm going to use that in the podcast. Like, you better.
That's a good one.
That's perfect.
Then again, the first week of every month is a soft opening for you, right?
Yeah, kind of. Actually, the busiest. The last one and the first one.
Yeah.
Mid-month is just quite down.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff for prompt, and you start thinking about like February, March type stuff too.
Yeah. We're playing with the Chinese New Year around that. It's already start time to start planning around the Chinese New Year. You cannot just get stuff in the middle of March, so you gotta go either prior or after.
Yeah.
Because the country shuts down big time.
Yep. Coco, what do you think about the first week of the year so far?
Definitely the first week was soft opening, like Javi said, but no, it's definitely this week has picked up big time. I think we've all seen it. It's been, just look at Javi. He was here until almost 5:00 last night.
Yeah.
But no, I think we've all seen it. A lot of
the Javier Fernandez production tracker. We'll find a word for this. That graph's going to exist.
But yeah, no, I think a lot of people are looking forward to Q1 and setting things up and meetings and just hopefully a more robust production and everything than it has been.
Rob, thoughts for the first week here?
I don't know. I think it's okay. It's been good. We were tracking even like the fourth week of December for orders, and the first week of January upticked a bit. So yeah, I'm happy to hear that there's problems. That's usually what ends up on my desk. So when there's problems, I know it's busy. So we've got a few problems right now. Nothing major, but when you're tackling issues, that's when you know that things are popping.
Yep. All right, so that's the third graph. Javi's work time, number of POs, and the number of problems.
Right.
That's a good tracker of things. Javi, you mentioned China a little bit, which I think has been an interesting topic the last couple of days, and I know AJ, it's been a bit of a headache, I guess, for you as well with what's going on there. Obviously. Well, I guess tell people if they don't know, China obviously shuts down, what is it, January, February? They do the New Year's, and there's extended shutdowns annually.
Is it February 8th?
February, first half of Feb.
Yeah, that's the
New Year.
The New Year.
The New Year, yeah.
So that's always like a week gap with shipments and production.
It's 10 days to 14 days sometimes.
Yeah.
So full 2 weeks.
Yep.
Nothing goes on.
And shipping's already getting tight with freight rates. The freight rates doubled this week from the China to the U.S. Like, we were looking at lanes from to New York. They were like 3,000. Now they're up over 6,000. So everyone's trying to rush to beat increases. So I think it's going to get even. Shipping's going to get more snug, I think, before the new year this year than typical. Yep.
And then certain products, for us, obviously the dicey is the big one you focus on. And I'm sure there's others that had kind of some unexpected shutdowns and what government imposed reduction in production, which is obviously reduction in production, that rhymed too closely. But yeah, causing some obviously further price increases and issues with supply.
Yeah, we're seeing the Chinese government limit electricity supply and energy supply to producers. They're going into their high demand energy season, so that's causing upticks in prices and shutdowns of producers in certain cases. So a lot happening in a short span here this week, and coming out of China.
And I guess a bit of a bright spot, they extended the exemptions, December 28th or 27th, something like that, right up to the last minute.
Yep. They gave us 4 days of wiggle room there. That was great. Nice of our U.S. government. Yep.
Out to May. So obviously pricing is going up. You can't really get stuff here, but what you can get here is still tariff-free for the exemption list.
On the exemption list, yep. But outside of that, there's still the 25% tariff, obviously.
Yep. And I think that sort of highlights another big problem, I guess, if you will, that we're seeing with the ocean freight stuff. The Red Sea is a big concern. The Panama Canal remains a big concern. And we talked about it, I think, on the December edition, but obviously that remains a large concern as well. And we're seeing a lot of headaches with trying to get updated freight rates, trying to get lead times on things. I know we've already seen a couple of shipments from Europe, 2-3 weeks delayed from what was originally quoted because of that. So that's something we're keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, the whole pattern's disrupted by Panama Canal and then now the Red Sea. And I just read this morning that oil tanker was taken yesterday and brought into Iranian waters. So there's quite a few. Most shipping companies are now saying do not go, through the Red Sea, and that cuts off anything coming or going to Asia from Europe, really. I mean, that's really a major impact for Europe, because now you have to go around the Horn of Africa, and that takes an extra 4 weeks and another $1 million for that vessel to do that, or approximately.
Yep.
So it adds a tremendous amount of cost, but it's really disrupting with the Panama Canal, which still is really bad. And to AJ and Javi's point, like the cost to ship from China to the East Coast is really long now, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, because you're sitting outside the Panama Canal waiting. Not only is it more expensive, but getting to the East Coast. So now what are people going to do? They're going to route through the West Coast, and they're going to impact the coast, the West Coast terminals with really busy volumes. And then everything's going to pop on rail. So you're going to see disruptions there coming up. So I think the original discussion started with Javi talking about reshoring. We talked about on our last podcast, a 10,000 mile supply chain is rife for disruption. Sure. I mean, you got a lot of problems and then we're seeing more of that. And that's what we kind of predicted in December when we had the podcast, is we're going to see a lot of geopolitical issues and environmental issues that'll create a lot of problems in supply chains. So we're revisiting some of those problems that we saw just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we had a call this week with a customer that produces, big company that have production in the States and then production in Europe and Asia and these different places. And it's largely cheaper on paper to produce things outside the States these days and bring finished goods in. But if you can't get those finished goods here, all of a sudden it's, hey, we need the U.S. plant now to kind of make stuff on an emergency basis and ship it, even though it's more expensive. And that puts last minute strain on raw material supply, trucks. I mean, it's amazing how far it trickles down.
Actually, the west coast of Mexico should capitalize from this, because you don't have to go through the Panama Canal. You can bring things into the west coast of Mexico, manufacture there. That should actually do pretty well. There'll be places the west coast of the U.S. could capitalize on this with the Panama Canal issues, things like that. But yeah, I mean, most of what we service is, mid-country, southeast, northeast. So we're going to have, it's going to be up to us as a distribution company to have the inventories for our customers and manage those supply chains. And that's really where we shine.
Yeah. When you look at Mexico, is most stuff coming to the West Coast, or is it more so the East Coast?
Depends. Yeah. So the major ports are Veracruz and Manzanillo. Depends on where you're coming from. Those are the major ports.
One's on either side.
Yes.
Yeah. So speaking of Latin America, I know we talked about it a little bit when we got started, but obviously I know you're spending a lot of time on the sourcing and procurement side of things. How's supply looking from our friends south of the border these days?
Supply, it's okay. A lot of increases in raw materials. Some of the alcohol, some of the stuff is going up quick, very quick, like 15 days validity. The validities are getting shorter and shorter because of uncertainty on raw materials. So that's gonna be a challenge. So it's harder to plan ahead because they don't want to quote you. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. It's like, I cannot quote February. I don't know my numbers.
Right.
It's like a dart.
Throw the dartboard.
Yeah, the dartboard. Yeah. But yeah, the customers in my region are hopeful for a better 2024. I've been talking to them, and they're in a slow start, but still ordering. So things are fine.
There's a lot going on there on like a regional basis too, right? There's a lot going on in Ecuador these days.
Yeah, there's a civil war in Ecuador. It's very sad what's going on. So this happened just this week.
Yeah.
So send thoughts and prayers to our friends in Ecuador.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
For sure. I know we're only, 11 days into the year, but obviously, we always kind of keep an eye on how the States are doing compared to the rest of the world, what's happening with the stock market. Obviously, I know we talked a little bit this week that we're coming into, obviously, an election cycle coming up in November. So regardless of political beliefs or which side of the aisle you're on, an election year will always impact policy, what's happening with the tariffs, what's happening with infrastructure bills and things like that, and then obviously what'll happen with the stock market and people's estimates for the year. So we're just in the beginning of that, and I'm sure we'll start hearing more and more of that with some of the debates and all that good stuff coming up. But it'll be a interesting few months, I think, as we get into that, and then obviously coming to the election in the back half of the year to see how that all shakes out. Lot to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, there was a increase in inflation in December to 3.4%, and that's kind of bad news. We certainly all of the interest rate hikes were to temper the inflation, but of course there's ravenous buying in December for Christmas and the holidays. So that's having an impact today on the stock market. But overall, the stock market's been up. There's been an AI run, and there's been just a general run, a bull run on the stock market since November. And it seems like it's kind of continuing. It's sort of flat. The first week where we saw the soft opening, I mean, it was ridiculous to watch the stock market. It wasn't doing anything. It was just flat line every day. But what's been really interesting to me is seeing the activity starting to increase in Europe and China, and reading a lot about it. The number of flights, both domestic and international in China, is rising tremendously. And the amount of fuel consumption in Europe, these are all indicators of economic activity, is also rising. So, this is exciting me because we were an island, we were doing pretty well. And in my opinion, we were recovering from COVID, and really up until now, we just hit normal. We're now back to normal. And I feel like Europe, and especially China, is just catching up and sort of racing towards that normal.
Yep.
And so if Europe and other Asia and China start doing well, that helps us because, that just, it just buoys products, reshores them in their own, instead of it all dumping into the U.S. and everybody focused on the U.S. and price cutting and all this sort of stuff. I mean, we are at very low chemical prices right now because of the deflation in China, really like the lack of demand in Europe. Everybody's focused on really just putting as much product in the USA as possible. And we've had to compete with that, being an America's distribution company. So seeing them come up, seeing in the publication the prices are rising. Javi mentioned alcohols, so oxo alcohol is starting to increase. There's also a good slate of plants that are starting to shut down just because they're either too expensive, or so rationalization's starting to kick in a little bit because of demand and things like that. It usually happens that way. Like, people don't rationalize at first and prices go into a slump, and then they rationalize and then prices rebound. And one last point is that we saw a rebound on propylene the last week and a half, and very interesting. There's been some outages. There's also a big freeze tonight in the southeast. So, you got to pay attention. And that's what I see. I mirror what these guys are saying when I talk to customers. I mean, they're worried about supply right now. It's not get on the bid list, you know what I mean, anymore. Where it was a year ago, it was like, we're going to have a reverse auction and a bid, and you're going to be the lowest price or you're out. Now they're like, we kind of like you. You're doing a good job. And so I think that attitude is it's very nice.
Yeah. We were talking
trying to get through that.
We were talking a little bit, I guess, like last week about, I think there's been a lot of pent up pressure for producers wanting to get prices up and trying to pass along prices increase and things like that. And I think we were talking like, we sent some increase letters, and then people were like, well, can you explain the increase? And we're like, well, like it's easy to fall back on oil and gas prices going up, but that's not the case. So
I was tongue tied.
Yeah. It becomes a little more like supply and demand, and again, just kind of prices being at sort of historical lows. People
price pressure. All over. I mean, whether it's lack of demand, so a robust supply, and or robust supply from imports, and now we're getting caught up in the war problems and geopolitical problems worldwide and things like that, and it's impacting the supply chains. But I mean, it is difficult to explain, but that it basically that things went down to such low, even on raw materials, and now they've rebounded back, and we haven't been able to capture any increase. So now there's they were talking about in propylene, the units are at zero or negative margins. So you only operate something where you're pumping stuff out in the millions of pounds at a loss. And then you go, well, we better turn the switch off.
I was surprised. We went to the Compounders Conference, I guess it was a good month ago or so now, and there's a lot of people talking about the infrastructure bills and some of the money from government regulations too. That seems like it's going to play a big role in conversations this year, seeing if and when production picks up. A lot of people wanted to capture money from that and wait until that money comes into play too. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, and if and when business picks up because of that too. I mean, I think we see it around here, just a lot of work being done on bridges and highways and projects like that too. So
I agree.
See a lot of that this year.
Definitely.
Well, I know we touched a little bit on obviously ocean freight and logistics, but we have our good friends over at the Logistix Company to give a more detailed freight update. So we'll hand it over to them. Good morning, Joe. Morning, Jamie. How you guys doing?
Morning, Ben. Good. How are you?
Doing well. Joe, welcome back. Jamie, welcome to the new podcast studio. Not a bad setup, huh?
It looks good.
I feel very nice. Far. Not having someone sit over there, you feel very far away. I don't know if this table's wider or what it is, but it's a fun angle from over here. How's everything going? How you guys doing? Well, Happy New Year. I think it's still somewhat allowed to say that, right?
Yeah,
are we past the window?
I think we got another week. Yeah. Happy New Year.
Thank you. How you guys doing?
Good. Yeah. Q1 is here. We're ready.
Good. That's what we like to hear. What's going on in the world of freight and logistics to kick off the new year? I know things can't just be smooth and easy and status quo. You know, there's always something. So, what are the things keeping you up at night these days in the world of logistics?
There's always fires to be put out in the world of logistics, but
hopefully figurative fires.
Sometimes
real ones.
Yeah.
Figurative for the most part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from our perspective, I think ocean freight right now is kind of front of mind. A lot of people are really concerned with how they're going to be able to get their containers or products in from the different ports. Yeah. Kind of staying ahead of that and trying to provide as many different solutions as possible, while also keeping pricing front of mind, I think is the big concern here. But I think that's the major one right now. I know Jamie's got some rail stuff he can go over.
Yeah. The ocean freight thing is interesting. Like you think about like all this stuff happening in the Red Sea, for example. It's like, oh, it's so far away. Like, what does it matter? And you look at like the routes that 80% of ocean container ships take, and it goes right through there, no matter where you're going, to pick up other stuff and then come back over, towards the States. Like it's when you look at those maps, it's scary how important some of these areas are.
It's the shortcut through that is the big thing. And then now it's happening at the same time as there have been restrictions on the Panama Canal, so it's kind of all conflating at the same time, and just not great.
I think there's a reason they're being targeted, right? I mean,
they're not.
When there's an opportunity,
they're no dummies. They know what they're doing. Absolutely. Unfortunately,
yeah, I know. It's one of those things. I mean, we dealt with the pent up issues with the rail infrastructure. What, a year and a half ago?
Still are for sure. But
now it's just another layer to it that unfortunately internationally we're starting to feel.
Well, we had some interesting perspectives from some customers in the States over the last couple of weeks. There's a lot of other regions globally that you can produce things cheaper than you can in the U.S. for a variety of reasons these days. So people are taking advantage of that, bringing in finished goods into the U.S. But when stuff like that happens, all of a sudden people can't get these cheaper finished goods because the ocean freight's either more expensive or they just can't get the vessels here because there's less of them. That all of a sudden means that the U.S. plants need to start producing stuff because they need stuff on an emergency basis, which then obviously impacts, hey, I need a truck tomorrow because I thought I had stuff, coming in the vessel, and the vessel's going to take 2 weeks. So it's this trickle-down effect of impacting, product supply here, impacting, hey, I need a truck tomorrow type stuff.
Yep.
So it is amazing how far all that trickles.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's what type of relationships do you have with Latin American producers, South American producers? I think that you'll see in the next year or so really kind of come to the forefront. Anybody who has that will be that much more advantageous in their offering. So it should be interesting.
Definitely.
Even if you don't import anything yourselves, it doesn't affect me. I don't import stuff. It does because, like I said, if you're competing with people that are making stuff in the States strictly, you're competing with that production. You're competing with the truck freight, on emergency loads. That's just like you are your planned regular business.
Mm-hmm.
So
or I mean, even if you're not importing anything, the odds that your supplier, if you have a domestic supplier, the odds that they're not, and just no one in your supply chain is, that's pretty low, right? Yeah. So
there's only so many raw goods, right?
Yeah. Do you really know your supply chain well enough, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps above just what you guys are buying?
Yeah. Yep.
It's interesting. We talked a little bit before you guys came on the rail side of things as well. Always a variety of factors, both sometimes good. Obviously sometimes rail can be a very beneficial and cost-effective supply chain. Other times there's some headaches that I'm sure keep Jamie awake at night sometimes as the in-house rail expert.
From time to time.
From time to time. What's happening on the rail side these days?
So right now, I mean, we're still kind of dealing with the same infrastructure issues we have been. I mean, obviously everyone's working slowly to try and get that back up to where it should be. But, with highways, as we all see on a regular basis, just in our own personal lives and bridges and all sorts of things like that, it's just a work in progress. I think a lot of things, at least in the U.S. right now, especially being from Rhode Island, a lot of things are not really where they should be. So I know that's something a lot of people are kind of unanimously working on. But from the rail side, beyond the infrastructure, I mean, right now we're seeing a lot of issues at the Mexican border, for instance. In like the El Paso area, we're seeing a lot of, issues with migrant concerns and having to close the border down for freight going to and from Mexico because you have waves of migrants trying to make it across that border while basically they have a big gate that opens up, the train goes through. And as of right now, people are trying to flood through with the train. Yeah. So that's definitely a concern and has basically led to that closure there. Sure. So on an off and on basis.
Yeah, obviously I think our number one trade partner, I think it's Mexico, not Canada, but I mean it's a big deal.
Billions of dollars.
They're up there. Yep.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, something obviously we talk more about, I think, the migrant side and the crisis on the border and all that good stuff, but if you think about it from the business side and the economy side, it plays a massive role.
Absolutely, yeah. That can't be understated enough.
And so what are you guys doing? Just assuming it's going to take a couple extra days, a week to get through? I mean, is that all you really can do? What's the fix?
So as of right now, I mean, with rail, we always assume a few extra days in most cases,
sure,
right? So, sure. I mean, in this case, basically what is having to happen, at least as of now, is you're having to apply for special permits to go through. So if you have freight that needs to go through, you basically a week beforehand need to get approval from Border Patrol, Homeland Security, and the rail line to go through. Whether or not you get that, it's not guaranteed. Right. So you just kind of have to keep applying until you get it. And, each shipment needs it. So
based on how many trains they want to allow through or whatever.
Right, because they're just trying to control that number so they can predict on a weekly basis, okay, we need to make sure these 10 trains are protected for Wednesday.
We have heard that, once you do get the permit, that kind of, streamlines it a little bit, but it's not guaranteed every time. It just kind of means, hey, we've done this before,
And it has to be done, as I said, for each shipment. So if that's a one-car shipment, if it's 10, even if it recurs every week, you need to refile every week
every single time.
Yeah.
Just another step.
Just making your life as easy as possible, right?
Yeah.
So keep a close eye on, your supply chains, up and down the supply chain, understand how some of these imports may affect you, how the vessels and ports may affect you. And then obviously if you do any business with Mexico, rail or not, it's a good time to keep in touch with your logistics folks and understand the implications of your supply chains, sounds like these days.
Yeah. And, by the way, winter's here. So weather piling on top of it makes for fun times.
Usually like a very high level, one of the first things we talk about is storms and things like that. Now when that falls to like number 4 on the list, you're like, wow.
Yeah, it's
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily it's luckily or unluckily if you're a ski mountain, unluckily, but luckily it's been a relatively mild winter so far at least.
Sure.
So we'll see if that continues, but hopefully it hasn't been too big of an impact at least these days.
No, I feel like we're just kind of on the precipice of it though, and hopefully if we're still saying this another month, then that's good news. Sure. But I feel like this is kind of the kickoff to winter weather time. So
for sure, I'm
ready for it. If it's gonna be cold, it might as well snow, I think.
Yeah, get it out of your system.
While it's cold and snowing, it's also football playoff season.
Let's go.
So a lot of Bills news today, right? I mean, the Buffalo Bills coming up this week. Bill Belichick potentially out in New England.
Out.
Big day for Bill.
Reportedly.
It's good. The press conference at noon, I think, right?
Yeah. Good day to be a Bills fan.
Maybe.
Sorry, guys.
We'll see if you're still saying that this time next month.
We'll
see.
We'll see.
The next episode, when's the Super Bowl? February 10th, 11th, something like that?
Yeah.
So the next episode may be post Super Bowl, so it's going to be a big month here.
We can plan accordingly.
We'll plan accordingly. Special edition.
We'll see.
Well, Joe, Jamie, appreciate having you guys on as always. Thanks for the logistics update. We will see where things are at, both in the world of logistics and the world of football in about another month. But we'll talk soon.
Thanks again, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, moving on. Price updates and trends. We talked a little bit about oil and gas. Relatively flat. Seems like oil may trend upwards a little bit with some of the stuff going on there. These numbers are accurate. I didn't change the date on the top that says as of 11/16, but I did change these. I mean, stuff's relatively flat. The stock market has ended the year on a very positive note and continues to kind of trend that way. So that's been a nice positive. The U.S. dollar to the euro is at a historical low. It's like $1.10 now, which is higher than it's been, I think, in a long time. Benzene seems like it's trended down a little bit, but we'll see what happens for coming up on February.
It's actually starting to strengthen in the last few days.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going back up kind of almost above December levels. So starting to strengthen a little bit, which I don't know why, because oil's pretty flat, right? But benzene's supply demand driven as well.
It is very much, and I expect, I said it in December, I definitely expect oil to rise. The reason why it hasn't risen is because there's so much coming from Canada and USA. And, but like I mentioned earlier, with the demand increase in Europe and Asia, there definitely will be some pressure, and it's a traded commodity. They've tried to talk about, restricting that, but I think it's going to be traded up. I mean, it strengthened just this week a little bit from 70 to 73. And the other thing too is natural gas has come up quite a bit. It was like $2.30, now it's up to $3. I mean, that's a pretty considerable.
Sure.
That's a 30% increase. It's not 10 or 12 per MMBTU, but it's interesting to see. And typically this time of year, you're going into high demand season for the cold weather, things like propane, natural gas. So it always kind of buoys it up. And then you've got oil. Typically we're going into getting ready for a driving season in the summer, where everybody goes on vacation and drives their Winnebagos in their cars and planes. So typically there's strengthening in these markets, but I think in most of the price increases that we've seen in the products that we sell is supply constraints and logistics.
Yeah. I think the gassing is a good point. Like, we're coming out of a couple of years where gas would go from $3 to $7 to $4 to $8.
Right.
So we're back to sort of normal increases.
Right.
The fact that it goes up 30 cents historically has been and should be a big deal, but you're almost numb to it in a way, because you're used to some of these drastic increases.
Fuel prices are pretty low right now. We've and they're doing that on purpose. They want to do that for the election cycle. The Democrats don't want to hear about their high gas prices right now. So there is some influence there for sure.
It's interesting. We put so normal gas 87. We put either 89 or 91 in Ab's Jeep because she has a turbo, and the gap between regular like 87 and 89 is like 70 cents. I feel like it used
you
to.
really shouldn't be doing that, by the way. You put 87 every single time.
But
That's me.
Either way, I feel that gap used to be like 20 cents and 20 cents to the next level. Like, someone's making, I think, a lot of money going from. I don't think 89
I mean,
costs
you're spending a lot of money doing it.
70 cents.
Not doing anything for your car.
I'm just going to say, Betty, I fill up the Tahoe, and I mean,
87 it is.
87 it is.
But either way, I feel like that gap just keeps getting wider and wider. Like diesel's like, I think $1.20 over gas, which I feel like it normally hasn't been that high.
I remember where it was parity with 87. That was a long time ago, but it's a premium now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But
to
stop
see.
that, please.
Yeah, don't worry about the turbo. Our trucks run diesel. You know how dirty that stuff is.
Yeah.
And our trucks have turbos.
It's
fine.
It's a marketing thing, and you guys are falling victim.
We're falling to it. We're kind of wrapping things up. We are mid-January, always a busy trade show time of year, which is exciting. Obviously, we're not releasing any shows that people aren't, don't already know of and aren't already going to, but obviously starting to plan, neck deep in planning for the AFPM coming up in March, and then the coding show and NPE. So busy couple months with, our own travel and seeing customers, but also some of the trade shows coming up. Always a fun time of year. Always fun when these 3 shows all fall within like a 6-week period of each other. So it's going to be busy, but it'd be good to see a lot of people that, especially the last cycle of shows. I think the last coding show was 2 years ago and had a little bit of the remnants of COVID going on. So maybe it wasn't as well attended as in the past. So it should be a busy couple months for shows.
Yeah, people are forecasting the NPE to be bonkers this year because
Really?
it's the first one in 6 years.
Yeah.
Because the last one got canceled during COVID, so people are expecting NPE to be a really good one.
Won't be there.
Which it always is anyways. Like, it's always gigantic and there's a ton of people around. So if it's even going to be more crazy than it usually is, that's something.
Yep.
That one 6 years ago was pretty ho-hum. It wasn't good. 6 years ago. Remember that? We were like,
I'm trying to remember.
it was like 2 days. It's a 5-day thing.
Oh yeah.
It was 2 days of busy and then it was dead.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And there was no international presence. The prior ones that we had been to, 1, 2, 3, maybe even before that, were like, wow. So it was like, I just remember it wasn't wow at all. And that was like, ooh, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
We're here 5 days. We give them 2 crews.
Yep.
Want to have as many people as possible so we can talk to everybody there. And it was like, but I think this year AJ's right. It's going to be.
Yeah, it's gonna be a busy March and April, but it's all good stuff. Kind of wraps things up, I think, on the podcast side. Obviously, this is our second full episode with our new booth setup here, so it's it's a nice spot to record, nice and bright. It's cooler in here today, which is nice.
Yeah, thankfully.
Thanks to the shout out to Honeywell for that AC unit. This episode's sponsored. No, I'm just kidding. That'd be cool though. So yeah, second episode here. We had our quarterly episode with Kathy Hall, which came out earlier in the week, episode 101. So if you haven't streamed that was a good one. She obviously we do it quarterly and they're always pretty good, but the ones in the beginning of the year, I think are always better. Kind of get a good recap of what happened the year before and then her thoughts on what's to come here for 2024. So if you haven't already streamed that, that's a good one to check out as well. And other than that, I think we're, kicking off the new year pretty strong. And I think in general, just, getting back to some quote unquote old school selling tactics. You're going to see hopefully moderate price increases and decreases, and it's really going to get back to who's doing the best job servicing accounts and entertaining and traveling. It's not just who's got product and what's the price and here's your PO. You're getting back to work.
That's right. We're good at that. We're good at old school. Hopefully we can continue with the old school forever.
Yeah. It's the
right way to do it.
With a little bit of new school mixed in there, maybe.
That's right. That's right. I mean,
stick to what works.
We're on one of the original podcasts in the chemical industry. Come on, we always try things. So, but end of the year wrapped up pretty nicely. We had a birth in the Logistix Company. Josh Savory had a daughter, sort of an emergency birth, but luckily everybody's okay and everybody's home safe. And Naomi's very cute and. So it was a blessing, and we also had Javi's wife Angela lost her father, so there was some sadness at the end of the year. Thoughts and prayers for her and then the family and everything. She spent a lot of time. Javi spent a lot of time in Colombia with the mom and stuff like that. So we had a new life and lost somebody. So it was for the people in TCC we had a mixed bag, but. Looking forward to a healthy and positive 2024 and getting back to those old school selling tactics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as always, we appreciate you for listening. Hopefully you're either streaming the audio version or potentially looking at us and our beautiful faces in this brand new podcast booth we have here. So as always, we appreciate you listening, following along, and we'll catch you on the next monthly episode.
Thanks, Benny.
Thanks, Benny.
Thank you.
Material contained on this podcast is provided by the chemical company solely for informational purposes. The information is not guaranteed to be correct, complete, or up to date. The information in the podcast is intended solely as a general education aid. TCC is providing this podcast as a public service, but it is neither a legal interpretation nor a statement of TCC policy. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by TCC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Views and opinions expressed by TCC employees are those of the employees and do not necessarily reflect the view of TCC or any of its officials. All statements, comments, and opinions presented are made in the context of robust dialogue and freedom of expression. TCC assumes no responsibility for any consequence relating directly or indirectly to any action or inaction taken based on the information in this podcast. While TCC strives to keep the information in the podcast accurate, complete, and up to date, we cannot guarantee and will not be responsible for any damage or loss related to the accuracy, completeness, or timeliness of the information. TCC assumes no liability for any errors or omissions in the content of this podcast. The information contained on the podcast is provided entirely on an as-is basis with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness. Thank you for streaming the View from Jamestown podcast edition.
Like and subscribe for more.